a relationship. And so, and it also is all about our mission statement here, which is why we're here, and that is that we exist to live the truth in love, to lead others to Christ, and to grow deeper in our relationship with Him. And that's why we want to do things out into the community, is that we can lead others to Christ to be saved. So we're continuing our series. So we're in week 4 of our series, Rocky Start, which is a series that looks at the life of Peter, and who was known as the Rock, and the challenges, kind of obstacles that he faced before he became a really big rock for Jesus as well. And before we get to our path, let me ask you something. When you were growing up, did you ever think that being an adult was just all positives? Like it was, you're going to stay up late, you're going to get your own way, you're going to eat whatever you want, it's going to be unlimited pizza, it's going to be unlimited whatever food of your choices, and it's just all positive. And when you were an adult, that's what the adults were hiding from you, was all of these positives, and that at the age of 18, you were going to unlock them all. And I just had a question. Did many of you think like this? That's right. That chocolate cake looked so delicious, And funny, you can have the glasses and the bag and whatnot, and usually it leads to the other picture, which is the face palming of all the bills on the desk. So you can have a lifestyle. It's just in 30 to 60 days, it's usually the other picture as well. So just letting you know. But I do want to say, the funny part is like a lot of people were like, I'm going to stay up as late as I want. Let me tell you, the problem as an adult is not staying up as late as you want. That's actually the easy part. It's being able to wake up when you want. That is the hard part, because you will be forced generally in school and work to wake up much earlier than you want. Yeah, you want to go to sleep at 4 a.m.? Not a problem. But your job expects you to be there at 9 a.m. So you're just, and especially like today, right? We're all remembering what it's like to lose an hour of one sleep. That's the adult. And I actually found out when you get to be an adult, an older adult, it's actually really easy to stay up as late as you want, because all you want to stay up to is about 9:30, and then you go to sleep and you're good. So I stayed up as late as I wanted and whatnot. But that's okay. But it's interesting how adulthood seems very positive, but then when you actually realize what it's like, it's not exactly what we always pictured it would be, right? And I think that when we become adults, it can hit harder for some people than others when they find out that the parts of life don't work the way they wanted to, and kind of like this girl.
Oh. I think the best thing would be to start with a job. No.
Yeah, absolutely. She needs a job. And I think it would be great if you volunteered some more at the soup kitchen. You could do some great volunteer work down there.
I did that. I started as a babysitter, and my first job was at my house.
Well, you don't pay me to babysit. You make me babysit for free.
She doesn't need a job babysitting. She needs a job in the world.
No.
A job? Volunteering? It's terrible. No. If you have to go on to Dr. Phil, and he has that, when it's like, I think that there's been some issues. Like that girl had a little problem about finding out what it was like to be an adult, and she didn't exactly like it, right? But I will say, as funny as that is, it can be really painful in a true sense when life doesn't really unfold the way you want it to be, or the way we want it to be. And the hard part is that the longer we believe in that faulty system, it tends to be harder to get out of it, especially if that system benefits us emotionally or especially financially, or maybe even relationally. Like it's really hard to break out of a faulty system when it benefits us. So if you have your Bibles, please turn to John, chapter 3. John is the 4th book of the New Testament, and it's the last of the Gospels. So this passage records one of Jesus' final lessons to his disciples before his crucifixion. So Jesus knows that time is short, And with time short, I always try to see what is he going to teach. If you had, one thing to tell people before you knew you were going to die, probably make it important. And so that's why I think that we should pay really close attention. So it goes into chapter 13, and so we start out in verse 4, and we're going to verse 17. If you don't have your Bibles, it'll be up on the screen as well. And here's how it goes. It says, Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, and took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist, and after that he poured water into a basin, and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with a towel that was wrapped around him. And he came to Simon Peter. He said to him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? And Jesus replied, you don't realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand it. No, said Peter, you shall never wash my feet. And Jesus answered, unless I wash you, you have no part with me. And then Lord, Simon Peter replied, not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well. And Jesus answered, those who have had a bath need only wash their feet, and their whole body is clean. And you are clean, though not every one of you, for he knew who was going to betray him. And that's why he said, not everyone was clean. And when he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. He said, do you understand what I've done for you? He asked them. You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you should also wash one another's feet. And I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. And very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. Now, I always, before we try to criticize Peter, okay, I always try to understand him. Because what I find is that Peter is not acting out of rebellion. He's not like, he's grown up in a world where the religious leaders had all the power, and many of them used it for their own personal benefit. And they used it for themselves. And that, to understand, to the Jewish people, rabbis were like the job. You could be a rabbi. If you were the son of a rabbi, it's like being the son of Bill Gates. You're like, I don't know what you did, but you won at life, okay? And for the rabbi, because they were always the highest people, because they were respected, they actually had such a good job you could read. I know that sounds like a joke for us, obviously, because we have so much literacy, but most people couldn't take time off of a grueling job to go to school and read, and rabbis could. So, and everyone gave way to them, they greeted them, so that's the world that Peter is in. And you know who didn't get as much respect, who didn't get, people got out of the way for? Fishermen. Not so much respect for fishermen, okay? And if we think about the professions today, right? Some professions are more respected than others. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. And we know probably positions that we can think of, some in our own job, our own company, or at least, that we think of people who get to boss people around, who have people that are going to, go for them, and they have underlings and secretaries, and they do all this, and they get the corner office, and it's not outside the realm of most people's possibility that they would say, I would like that job. It's not you being super selfish and whatnot, because what happens is you're like, I would love a job with a private bathroom, okay? Because, yeah, what's wrong with that? I would love a job where I can tell people, hey, go get my dry cleaning, and it gets like, why not, And so what I think is that right now, if we understand that, Peter's actions can be deeply human. Deeply human, like always, is that he's acting in many ways that we would probably act as well, if you think about it. And it leads me to my first point, and that is that Peter wanted to rise, but Jesus chose to kneel. And if we understand this is the way Peter is thinking, we can understand the way he is doing it and why Jesus is the last part before he leaves, before he knows that Christianity is going to be the new thing in this whole world. This is what he says to Peter. And Peter has grown up watching all of the leaders use their power for their own prestige, and now he's following a rabbi who heals the sick, who casts out demons, who has miracles, and he's challenging the authority again and again and again. He's challenging them, and he's like, man, I'm one of his 12. I'm one of this rabbi's 12. And if this Jesus guy, if he rises to the top, who's going to rise to the top with him? This guy, right? And when you think about what Peter is thinking, he's like, man, these rabbis, it's going to be me, baby, right there. That guy, that's Peter, that's the rock. Better get out of his way. Give him your seat. And again, that's deeply human. That's deeply human. And the crazy part is that this exchange says this, then the mother of Zebedee's sons, this is James and John, came to Jesus with her sons, and kneeling down, this is the mom, kneeling down, asked a favor of him. What is it you want, he asked. And she said, grant that one of my two sons of mine may sit at your right, and the other at the left in your kingdom. Man, if you're getting your mom to go to Jesus to ask you for a favor, maybe you should ask him yourself. Hey, mom. Like, I mean, you know, it's terrible. I mean, I only let my mom make my doctor's appointments, so I don't know what it's like, okay? She made my doctor, I mean, she doesn't make them now, I mean, Mac does, but, you know, I can't, it's terrible to get someone else to do your dirty work for you for Jesus, right? But yet, this is the idea. It's like, hey, man, I want to be at your right and left. But do you see the ambition? Do you see how it's like, this wasn't a Peter thing. It was a disciple thing, right? Because they're probably all thinking the same thing, because they're all seeing the same thing. And so when Jesus kneels down with like a towel around his waist, okay, Peter, I think, is starting just to crack to understand what's happening, and he doesn't like it a single bit. He doesn't like it. And that's why he says, you'll never wash my feet. And I don't think that that's humility. Like, no, Jesus, you will never wash my feet. It's resistance. I don't want you washing my feet. Because I don't want a rabbi that I'm doing curtailing. I'm behind. I don't want him washing my feet. And I think that when Jesus was kneeling, the ladder that Peter was trying to climb started to collapse. And Peter doesn't like it. Because Peter still believes in the ladder. And here's a short clip from a movie maybe you've seen. It's like what happens when a system is so infected by corruption that sometimes it just needs to be torn down and another one take its place. Watch.
Get past it, there's the server blade, maybe we can salvage, but
We're not salvaging anything. We're not just taking down carriers, we're taking down shields.
Shield had nothing to do with it.
You gave me this mission. This is how it ends. Shield's been compromised. You said so yourself. Hydra grew right under your nose and nobody noticed.
Why do you think we're meeting in this cave? I noticed.
How many big prices do you use? Shield, Hydra. It all goes.
Don't look at me. I do what he does, just slow. Well. Looks like you've given the orders now, Captain. We have to assume
That's from The Winter Soldier. If you haven't seen it, good movie. Especially because it was in the old time of very very good movies with Thanos, the old one. But I like how I don't know if you noticed like how deflated Nick Fury is when Captain's like, no, it all has to go. And he's like, but I don't want it to go. Like, and why not? Because he is the leader. He was the former leader of Shield. It's like, no. We'll just get rid of Hydra. We'll just get rid of the bad people, and then we'll just go on as if nothing happened. And Captain America is like, no. It all has to go. We have to rebuild it because if it keeps happening the same way, the same thing is just going to happen. And Nick is like, but I built it. It's mine. I like it. And that's why he feels so deflated. It's like, okay, well, I guess you're calling the shots, Captain. And yet, that's exactly kind of what Jesus does. Is that's the tension in John 13. Is that Peter thinks that Jesus is going to replace the corrupt leaders. Yeah, like, those Pharisees. Yeah, right on the money. Like, get rid of them and put you and me and all the 11 up at the top. And then we'll just that's it. And he's like, no. The whole system has to go. And that's why I think it brings up this interesting thing that Jesus doesn't change who's at the top. He redefines what the top means. And that's important. But I would say this, don't act like we would have done better. Whenever I read the Bible, I rarely am like, oh yeah, I'm so bad. I would never have done that. Don't act like we wouldn't have done better. Because if we're really honest with ourselves, I think that we would behave very similar to Peter, especially if we realize our whole lives that we want power and comfort and privilege and security. It's hard to give all that stuff away. I see many people rail against rich people, and fair enough, because from a moral standpoint, I don't like a lot of what some people do with their money from a moral standpoint. But you know what? I've yet to see a single person give back their tax return. Okay? Haven't seen not one yet. And it's tax season, April 15th. It's coming up. I've not seen someone go to TurboTax and be like, I don't need that money. Government can totally deal with it better than I can. Okay? We don't give up money. I've never seen anyone decline a raise. Okay? Never saw anyone be like, no, I get paid enough for this job. You're good. Okay? Now, I've seen people decline a raise that came with responsibility, where they're like, we'll give you this money, and you're going to do all this amount of work. And they're like, no. That is functionally different than a raise with no strings attached. And I have yet to see anyone not take a no strings attached raise. So don't think that we would not say no to something that could make us be richer or more comfortable. That's why I want us that we're not a better than particularly Peter, because he's been raised in a system that he's been probably very uncomfortable with. You know what's uncomfortable? Being like, anyone been on a boat for 10 hours? Okay, like, I come back sunburned, and I'm doing nothing but just talking and having refreshments on a boat. This guy is in 10 hours every day doing hard labor. And I'm sure like when he comes back and he sees all these people, all these people in their comfort, that he wants that. Again, that he's grown up in that. So why would Peter, and here's also, the religious leaders were supposed to be the ones that were the best. And he sees them using their power. So why would he think Jesus would be different in that aspect? Where it's like, yeah, we're going to go from selfish, like just total selfishness, to we're going to have the right system and then make the right system work for us. Seems fine. And that's why I think that this moment is so disruptive, because Jesus, by the way, Jesus is not anti-leadership. Okay, he's not like, yeah, I hate leaders. Okay, he's not saying no one should guide the flock. Jesus wants someone to guide the flock. And he doesn't want the system abolished, as in like systems are potentially bad. But what he is getting abolished is he wants to get rid of leadership that is based on self-exaltation. Leadership that says, I want to be at the top because I want people to like me. I want the access and the comfort. That is what I think he absolutely wants to destroy. And that's why Peter doesn't want Jesus to be beneath him, because as he says, no one is above a master. So if I'm beneath you, now we're going to actually have a leapfrog towards the bottom, and no one wants that, right? Well, at least not Peter. And we can also, again, we can say, no, it would never be me. Don't be too certain. Don't be too certain. And you can't imagine a kingdom of God where the authority is actually a tower. That's also a problem. But you know who can? Jesus can. And I believe that in that moment, Peter has a decision to make. That he can either cling to the system he understands, or he can allow Jesus to redefine greatness. And I believe that tension is actually still today. Like, we have that tension today. People want to climb the corporate ladder, right? People still want the corner office. People still want bigger paychecks, still want cars, still want staff, and you can't get rid of that, because that's the world system. And as long as we live in the world, that system will forever be here. So that's why we have to look at this and say, we can't have a godly, worldly system. There's no worldly system that we just sprinkle a little God on and like, no, we're good now. As long as the head pastor has the corner office and the personal, like, we're good. Okay? Of course, like in 20 years from now, heaven forbid, I have a corner office. You can't use this against me. No. Just kidding. I don't mind. I don't know. Corner offices, whatever. I'll remote work in from the study. That's what I'll do. But here's a big thing also that I think is that once you're at the top, the reason why we can't ever get rid of the world, and we also can't become the world, because at the top of the world is Satan. And what happens is, no, he's not there. He is not there to be mean to you. He is there to hand you a drink and say, look at everything below us. Isn't it such a great view? Isn't it great that you have now made it where I'm at, because you stepped on every single person to get here? Because that's the idea, is that Satan is not here to say like, oh man, no, this is not where you want to be. That's what Satan does. He says, this is exactly where you want to be, and that's why I rebelled against God, because this is the best view, isn't it, over the world, where I'm at. And that's why a lot of people think like Satan is here to destroy you. He's here to destroy your eternal life, no doubt about that. But if he can do it with where you smile, with a smile on your face, he would love that. Absolutely. And that's why it gets to the entire conversation. So in verse 8 and 9, it says this. It says, no, said Peter, you shall never wash my feet. He says, unless I wash you, you have no part with me. And then the Lord, not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well. Now, I believe that, again, at first glance, it sounds really spiritual, right? No, you'll never wash me, ever. Don't do that. And And that's why when Jesus says, well, unless I do it, you have no part of me. And then, of course, he changes it right. He's like, oh, you don't want to wash, if you say no to none, then wash all of it. 0, 100. There. And this leads me to my second point, is that we are cleansed, but we still need our feet washed. Because it's not about what Jesus is doing. It's what Jesus has already done, but what we continue to do. It's okay, she is my child. What? Peter is trying to preserve the system of thinking, and I actually believe he attempts something very, get this, he attempts something very human, very big. So when the act of kneeling threatens his greatness, what does he do? He over-spiritualizes it. No, Jesus isn't washing my feet. No, this is something totally different. I think it's like ceremonial cleansing, he's just, because that's why he's like, oh, well, if you're going to wash me, you can't do the one thing that we all know is subservient. You have to do something completely different, and that says you'll just wash all of me. Just wash all of me. And again, you think like that's humility. No, because now you can pawn it off as if someone ever said, well, didn't Jesus wash his feet? Like, no. He wasn't a servant. No. He was doing some spiritual act. And now he has the excuse to say what it isn't. And also kind of do the, no, in fact, I'm spiritual too. I will do the spiritual thing and never wash anyone's feet. I'll just kind of substitute with something else. And that's exactly what, and I think that is very human, is that it's not what it is. It's how can we change this to be what it is for me. And I want to say, by those who don't know what's happening, like why this is so important, real quick, 1 second history lesson. So people didn't have cars back then, as you might know. They walked everywhere. And if you've ever walked in on dirt, not the sandy beach, if you've ever walked in dirt in sandals, your feet get a little dirty. Okay? And you know what? No one wants in their house that dirt. Okay? No one wants that dirt in their house today, much less when you have dirty feet. And so what happened is that it was customary to have someone that would literally wash your feet to get the dirt off. And that position was either a hired servant or an unpaid servant. But the idea is it was a servant. It was undesirable because anyone want to wash some feet? I don't. Yeah. Who wants feet washing duty? Not it. Nose goes, okay? Immediately, right? I mean, occasionally I'll do it because I love my wife, right? We'll do it very, very in a loving way. But I'm not washing a stranger's feet. No. But right, so this was very undesirable. And so that is why I feel Peter wants it to be something it's not. Because when Jesus is doing it, if it's true, Jesus says you need to do something undesirable. No one wants to do that, right? I don't want to do that. And that's why I think Peter is so desperate to change what it is. Look in verse 10. It says, Jesus answered, those who have had a bath need only to wash their feet because their whole body is clean. And that to me is very simple and profound because you're clean. You're clean, but you get dusty, right? And this, by the way, is one of the clearest pictures of salvation in both what it is and why you need continual forgiveness, but we have ultimate salvation. As he says, no, you're clean, but you do still need your feet kind of washed occasionally. But I think that Peter's deeper understanding is deeper misunderstanding is the washing, right? Because he's resisting dependence on God. Now I'm sure he doesn't want an all decisive. I would love a one and done. Okay, Jesus, I said the prayer. We're good. I'll see you in heaven, right? See you in heaven in 60, 70 years, depending on when you say that prayer. It would be awesome. Who doesn't want that? But the idea, of course, is that if the world doesn't work that way, if the world did work that way, awesome. Except it doesn't. And he's talking about ongoing humility. And what he doesn't want, and I think that we all struggle with this, is the constant need for continual expectation to serve others. That's hard. And Peter doesn't want it, and I feel like neither do we. We hesitate. I had a friend I met who served on the executive pastoral team of Central Church. Central Church is the largest church in Las Vegas. The largest. It's down close to Henderson. It has 12,000 people every Sunday in person, not to have any satellites, but satellites and online. Okay? He was on the executive pastoral team. And he told me a story one time that he went to a small, he wanted to branch out. He went to a smaller church, and they were doing a Father's Day event. Because Father's Day is coming up, and so they did a car show. I know that some people are like, yep, Turner's like car show. I heard a car show. What? He was nodding, and they did cars. Okay. They did a car show. So he brought these awesome custom cars, that flame on there and whatnot. They had a barbecue. Okay. Believe me, I love all these ideas. show, like the masculine Father's Day. Everyone loved it. Like, it was awesome. Who doesn't like barbecue? I don't care if you're a man or a woman. Like, I don't care if you're a father or not. Barbecue's awesome, okay? But then they got done. They got done, and they did the powwow afterwards in the meeting, and it was like, and everyone's high, everyone's on a spiritual high. Well, I hope not. You didn't tell me that part. But they're on a spiritual high, and he said, and everyone's like, oh, this was so amazing, so amazing. And he said this word. He said, awesome, so we're going to do this next year too. And he said that the spirit in the room changed because everyone's like, this is a lot of work. And he's like, yeah, but it was amazing. Like, we're all great. We're all having, and they're like, we'll see. We'll see if it is. And what amazed him when he told me the story is that what worked and what everyone was so, it knocked out of the park. It was like, yeah, but are we going to have to keep doing this over and over and over again? And of course you might say, who wouldn't want a success over and over and over again? And the answer is the people who plan it. That's easy. The people who had to put in all their work and time. And he said that immediately it was like, I don't know. It comes in churches where people are like, I like a one and done, but I don't necessarily like stuff that happens over and over and over again. That takes a lot of work. Of course, like in a church, the interesting thing is Easter comes every year, Christmas comes every year, Thanksgiving comes every year, but you see it. Like I see it in churches. And so don't think it can't happen to us, it can't happen to the church, it can't happen to other people. And so I want to say, sustained obedience can be really hard. Like daily confession, I'm a huge supporter of daily confession. I'm a Protestant, so I'm not a huge supporter that you need to come to me to have daily confession. I mean, you can, but I'm just going to take you to God. Like, we're going to pray together because I am massively a fan of you having daily confession to the one who can forgive you your sins, which is absolutely not me, it's Jesus Christ. And you can go directly to him. Thank goodness for Protestants. But I do want to say this, that for those of us who do belong to Jesus Christ, the cross is sufficient. And that's what I said, is that Jesus gives you a bath, but we still walk through a dusty world. And I say that all the time. You do. Okay? I have a very nice bathtub upstairs, but these jets came in the house. It was nice, okay? And I like taking baths. I don't care what people say, okay? It's nice to relax. People hate baths, love hot tubs though. I was like, that's just a big bath. You're just confusing a small bath with a big bath. But you know what, here's the thing. My bath can get you clean. Yeah, you'll come out relaxed. But the one thing it cannot do is wash away your sins. Will not. Okay? Only Jesus can do that. But here's what we can do, is that we can help wash another's feet. We can help, like, proverbially. And if necessary, I'll step into the uncomfortable place where dust collects. So it kind of leads me to my last point, because I think that when Jesus kneels, he's really threatening against Peter's position, and that his version of greatness has to die. But I want this to be understanding in my final point, is that Jesus calls the strong to serve. So after Jesus washes his feet, he says, do you understand what I've done? And here's what it says in verse 13. This is Jesus. He says, you call me Lord and teacher, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Listen, I am Lord. Here's the thing. He doesn't reject his authority. He doesn't say, like, well, I'm now just a servant. He says, I am Lord and your teacher, and I'm doing this. He doesn't reject his authority. He doesn't give it up. In fact, after he gets crucified, he says, all authority is mine. But here's the thing. Jesus is not serving out of weakness. He is serving out of strength and authority. And that is what is so crucial for us to understand, is that the world's definition of greatness is very straightforward. It says, use your power to make yourself comfortable and secure. And Jesus says, use your power to help others. That is functionally different. And that is why this is so important, is that it is easy to serve others when you're being forced. It is much harder to serve others when it is your choice. And that's also why I say is that Jesus does not reject power. He redefines its purpose. Because there is a significant difference between those who have nothing but who are forced to serve and who serve by choice. By the way, students, if your parents force you to do work, that's called family responsibility. Okay? Just throwing that out there. Okay? But that's the difference. If you're being forced, you don't have a choice. Okay? That's actually called oppression. We have people who are serving us and we force them to. Okay? But what I will say this, and I make a point, is that Jesus shows us what to do with power, and that is our power is to serve others and not ourselves. I'll kind of give you one story. For many of you who know me, okay, And so I throw parties, I throw game nights, I throw like holiday parties. Air Force meetings are like here. I just like to use my house. But if you ever come to one of my game nights and you ever see what I'm doing, it is almost always serving others. I make sure that glasses are refilled. I make sure food is filled. I make sure everyone is included. I make sure everyone is having fun. I make sure that everyone is involved in the game. And I don't have people come over to my house and be like, okay, awesome, this is my house. Get me my food. I don't have people serve me. Is that when you come and I'm a host, I serve others. And let me tell you, I don't serve by force. I serve by choice. And you know who is all happy to do it? Me. I'm actually, and what's amazing, especially for parents involved, is that when you see your children, when you serve your children, and they are so happy, and you know they're happy because of what you have done, it really makes you feel good. It should. I hope it does. But that's the idea, is that I serve because I have authority and not poverty. I serve out of my generosity. And that's why I think God is doing what Jesus is showing. I have one picture that I wanted to show you, what we do in this house. I have a picture. So this was we had a youth camp here in 2020 when COVID happened. And these girls, every summer, the church would have a youth camp, and they couldn't do it because of COVID. So I said, that's it. I'm going to have it here. And all of these girls turned 16 that year, and none of them could have a Sweet 16 party because of COVID. They couldn't invite anyone. It was all in lockdown. And so I said, we're going to have it here, and I'm going to use my house and my resources to make sure that these girls have a Sweet 16 because that matters to me. And I really do feel, having talked to a couple of them, it did make a massive difference in their house, in their futures. And that was 5 years ago, and I met one of them 6 months ago when we actually did volunteer over at Central Church. And she said, thank you, because you showed me what it was like to serve for the Lord. And again, it was awesome, but I didn't serve so she could serve. I'm so glad that I served because Jesus served us. So as we wrap up, I'd just like to point out that this story, again, is happening at the end of Jesus' ministry. And still Peter is struggling to understand what Jesus is about. And so I wanted us to see what Jesus did with his personal actions, not. And can I just say, some of us, does Jesus ask us to wash each other's feet? Maybe. Maybe not physically, though potentially. But I want us to realize, Jesus washed dirty man's feet. Okay? This was not, what Jesus did was wash actual feet. So this was not like they had a servant, and it's like, okay, Jesus, we did most of the work for you. It's a little dusty, but you polished them off. This was Jesus being like, no, I'm going to do it. And that's what I'm saying, is sometimes washing others' feet is not about physical. Sometimes it is about spiritual. Sometimes it's about relational, about their life. So I just want to, of course, leave you with 3 questions. That's this. First one is, are you striving for a ladder or a tower? Okay? I don't think power is inherently bad. In fact, I like power when it's used properly, because that's what I think is happening in the church, is for those who don't have any resources, it's hard to give to others. For those who don't have, it's hard to help others. If you don't have time, you can't give time to others. If you don't have money, you can't help buy things for others. Power is not inherently wrong, but I feel that power that's used for selfishness can lead to immorality. And that's why Jesus says, no, use your power for others. And I will say this, what Jesus did was 100% intentional. No one asked for hey, Jesus, we forgot the foot washer. I don't know if you noticed, in all of our Last Supper, goings on, we forgot to get the guy on the door. And Jesus was like, oh, don't worry, I got it. And he put it. This was not a oopsies. This was, I had a plan. And that's also what I want to say. So, the kingdom growth is meant to increase your capacity to serve, not to be served. And then question 2 is, do you resist God when his way does not match your desire? Because I think that this was the moment where things started to click for Peter. And you see, Peter wanted to reject it. Now, thankfully, he changed. But I think it's very human. That's why I like the Bible, because I see a ton of humans behaving very human. But what kind of world, Christian world, are you trying to inherit? One based on power? One based with you at the top? If so, I think Jesus has a difference of greatness. And then finally here, and this is what I really want us to do, is whose you're like, Scott, my feet are dirty. I have a soaker upstairs. I have a nice foot scrub. We'll bring it down. We'll get a nice, have a little heater. 5 minutes, your feet will smell nice. They'll look nice. Got one of those scrapers, whatnot. But that's not what the disciples needed. The disciples did not need their feet washed physically. They needed to wash spiritually. And here's what I'll just end with. If you're saying like, Scott, I can't wash other people's feet because I am so struggling right now, I can't even wash my own feet. And here's what I want you to do. I have a suggestion. Fill out a Connect card. Say, I need help. You don't have to fill it out all. Just like, I need what you taught. And I will wash your feet for you. I will do that for you. Because Jesus did that